Number 29 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Science and Research. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of June 23rd, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Pursuant to Standing Orders 108-3-I and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, September 26, 2022, we are continuing our study on citizen scientists. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefits of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those taking part by video conference, click on your microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. I will do my best to keep everyone on time. If you would watch, especially for the presenters at the end of their 5-minute slot, to see if I'm giving you the speed up signal, please kind of wrap it up. I mean, no disrespect, but we need to get through all our witnesses and questions today. In accordance with our routine motion, I inform the committee that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of this meeting. I would now welcome our guest to our committee, and we'll start with opening statements from Dr. Moran for 5 minutes. Dr. Moran, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm the president and CEO of Ocean Networks Canada, and I'll describe it as ONC throughout. And we operate one of Canada's largest research facilities funded by the Canada Foundation for Innovation and the Government of Canada. We operate these world-leading cabled ocean observatories in Canada's Pacific and Arctic and Atlantic oceans, and these observatories collect and deliver real-time ocean data for science, society, and industry. Through our data system, Oceans 3.0, data are collected in all forms, are quality assured and archived, and made openly available. In 17 years of operations, ONC has grown to support more than 22,000 users from Canada and around the world. We currently host 12,000 sensors, many of which are Canadian-made, and we currently store over 1.2 petabytes of data, a vast archive which is an ocean resource. Canada's coastline at 250,000 kilometers is the world's longest. If outstretched, it would circle the Earth's equator over 6 times. Given this scale, the unprecedented threats from climate change, and the ocean's particular role in regulating our climate and making Earth habitable, citizen scientists are helping to fill a gap that is critical for understanding our changing ocean, its impacts, and ways to mitigate and adapt to these impacts. ONC's citizen science programs launched in 2012 when we deployed our first cabled observatory in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. While engaging with the community to design this first of its kind observatory, ONC learned that the community wanted real-time information, particularly about the thickness of the sea ice to ensure their safety, as climate change had made traveling on the ice risky and unpredictable. So we included a sea ice profiler instrument to the observatory. That first year, we were all keen to learn if this observatory would withstand the harsh Arctic environment, and I'm pleased to say that it did, and it continues to this day. And from that first day, their observatory provides sea ice thickness data to the community in real time. The data from all the instruments are of particular interest to the community's youth who regularly engage with ONC science to analyze them and understand their changing oceanfront yard. The Cambridge Bay Community Observatory success set ONC on a path to work with other coastal communities and initiated citizen science in many other locations. Citizens make excellent scientists because they understand that their data are beneficial to local and sometimes national decision-making. To complement community observatories, ONC developed the Citizen Fishers Program, which puts science instruments in the hands of citizens. Many local boat operators, mariners, and volunteer citizens regularly collect ocean data to help inform responsible ocean management. ONC now supports 37 community observatories and citizen science programs, mainly with Indigenous partners on all 3 of our coasts. We anticipate these numbers will continue to grow. These localized observing systems complement existing regional and global marine research activities while also providing education, training, and outreach opportunities for many coastal dwellers, including for Indigenous businesses, communities, and youth. There are key success factors that demonstrate the value of these programs. Clear partnership roles and understanding communities' unique needs are without a doubt the foundation to this success. Respecting Indigenous data sovereignty and implementing the ownership, control, access, and possession, or OCAP principles, are another. The data must be provided openly to the local communities for easy retrieval and be of the highest quality. It is also important to provide support to citizens wishing to participate. In our case, this support might include funding for a community boat to collect the data or compensated dedicated community participants for their precious time. ONC has found that citizen scientists are a key stakeholder group that fill gaps in our ocean knowledge. Programs like the Oceans Protection Plan and the Salmon Restoration Innovation Fund, and now Canada's ocean conservation goals like 30 by 2030, would see great benefit from an expansion of citizen science, where many Indigenous communities are truly the stewards of Canada's coastline. Such programs continue to contribute to Canada's leadership in ocean science and provides critical information for combating the impacts of climate change on all three coasts. And from just coming from Impact 5, I can say that I see Canada as truly leading the world in Indigenous citizen science. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Moran, and thank you for keeping it within 5 minutes. Now on to Mr. Huang for 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jason Huang, and I'm here in my role as Vice President of Salmon Programs with the Pacific Salmon Foundation. I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me to appear. Before joining the Pacific Salmon Foundation 4 years ago, I spent 25 years working with DFO. And from then until now, I've worked with and supported citizen scientists, and I have a deep respect and appreciation for the work they do. And here's the main point I want to highlight for you today. Canada is missing out on huge untapped potential to engage citizen scientists, especially in areas where there's a natural public interest in a subject. And to explain this, let me turn to an example where Canada does engage the capacity and talent of our communities, the sport of hockey. Why is Canada so good at hockey? Because we have the best players and the best coaches. So where do they come from? They come from our community hockey programs. Every hockey player in Canada was once a community hockey player. So was every coach. Hockey is more than just the players who play in the NHL. It's about the entire network of volunteers, amateurs, and professionals that all play a part in making Canada the best of the best. We can look at science in a similar way. We have professionals at universities, in government agencies, but we also have non-professionals in our communities who can be important parts of a broader network and system that can do more work, study more things, and solve more problems than the professionals can do on their own. Canada is a vast country. The professionals can't be everywhere doing everything, but we do have citizens out there who are well placed to do their part. Our hockey teams are great because of significant community engagement and support. We can do something similar when it comes to science. So how do we support and grow citizen science capacity in Canada? First, we need a strategy and a system, not ad hoc ideas or funding that we just throw out there and hope for something good. Second, we need to let people know how they can help. We need to give them a bit of guidance and direction. Third, we need their work to turn into something useful. Where does it go? How can it be used? And four, we need to show people the work is important, valued, and appreciated. We need to show up, see what they're doing, and say thank you. The federal government is generally not all that well placed to directly engage citizen scientists, but the federal government can use bridging organizations to help support more citizen science work. As an example, at the Pacific Salmon Foundation, we have a 35-year history working with federal and provincial governments, First Nations organizations, and community groups. We have administrative, scientific, and technical capacity that can help to connect federal funding and priorities to programs of high impact and high benefit that community interest can lead. For every dollar that's put into these projects, about $7 in value is created through the leveraged efforts of community volunteers. Here's an example from our work on the kinds of things that can happen when we engage citizen scientists. We're partnering with the Dr. Francis Wanis Lab at the University of Victoria on an adult salmon diet study, and here's how it works. When citizen science volunteer anglers catch a salmon, they send the salmon's stomach to researchers at the university, where the contents are sorted and identified. The results give us a picture of what the salmon are feeding on. throughout the seasons, as well as the size and type of forage fish that are present in those locations. Since sample collections undertaken voluntarily from anglers located all over the area, the program has proven to be a cost-effective way to monitor and track changes in forage fish populations in the Salish Sea. And so from a research and conservation perspective, the results are relevant to a better understanding of forage fish stocks, which are essential food sources for our wild salmon. The program is also valuable because it engages the recreational fishing community and increases their understanding and enthusiasm for the science. It's a wonderful project, and it's providing data that is not available via typical science sources. So I'd like to leave you with a quote from Romeo LeBlanc in 1978 when he was the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, speaking about the new DFO Salmon Enhancement Program. And here's what he said. The enhancement program's real long-term success will be measured not so much by the miles of spawning channels as by the respect of generation after generation visiting these channels and salmon streams and rivers. The real investment of the Salmon Enhancement Program is in, not for, but in the people of British Columbia. So with this as inspiration, if we develop strategies and systems to support citizen science, we will be able to engage and activate enormous untapped capacity that exists across the country. And we will be able to do more work, study more things, and solve more problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Now we'll move to the 6-minute question round of our committee, and we're going to start from the Conservatives with Mr. Soroka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming today. I'll start off with Dr. Morin. You have says that you've got citizen scientists, and they were quite concerned about the thickness of ice. That's great in one area, but how challenging is it to get all other partners on board to become citizen scientists with the vast majority of our kilometers of shoreline?
Well, thank you for that question. Every community is different. That's what we found. And so it's really ensuring that we have rich dialogue with each of the communities, and each of the communities have different priorities. So, for example, some communities here on the west coast of British Columbia are keenly interested in understanding ship noise and how it might impact their fishing grounds, or their understanding of the whale populations offshore. So we tailor each of the ways that we collect these data with these partners in a way that meets those needs. But of course, it really does take true discussion to actually get to the key need in each of these communities. But I have to say, one of the overriding issues that seems to be there for all is the fact that most communities want to have their youth be part of understanding science, technology, and engineering and math. And that seems to be universal across all of the communities.
Okay, well, thank you for that. My other question then is, you said you've got 37 communities, and with the vast kilometers of shoreline we have, is that a good representation, or would you like to see more? Because, you know, where more population exists, it's easier to find scientists. Where there's less, it's very difficult, I'm sure. So I was just wondering how much more, or is that appropriate amount?
No, we need many more, of course. And so what we've done at Ocean Networks Canada, I mean, as I mentioned, you need to ensure that the data that are collected are of high scientific value, as Jason just talked about. And so we have built a back end of the ocean, of the data side, to be robust enough to actually expand tremendously. So we are ready to expand, and we have been in discussions with the Fisheries and Oceans Canada about the potential to do that.
Do you think then in these remote areas, because you had mentioned that one of the sensors you were using survived the winters and that was great, but is it a valid type of system to continually just use the sensors and monitoring, or do you actually need boots on the ground to speak?
Well, we do have to have some training, of course, but the community fishers, and actually one of the reasons we started Community Fishers was because of the Pacific Salmon Foundation's hallmark approach to citizen science. And really, it's really putting an instrument in the hands of these communities. And so they gather data in their own ways. So it really is pretty seamless. Some communities in the BC coast have their own boats, but in the Arctic during the winter, they drill holes in the ice and put the sensors through the ice. So it's the sensor systems have proven to be pretty robust, and there's such keen interest in communities collecting their own data. I think it has the potential to grow almost seamlessly with a modest amount of funding, as has already been described.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Dr. Morin. Mr. Wong, you had said that, we've got a lot of citizen scientists out there in the wings that are not even knowing they're citizen scientists, and I love the fact that you said funding isn't the save-all grace. So really, how do you engage them better to make sure that they, like you say, their information will be valid and everything?
Well, it's a big question, but I'll maybe turn some focus on this, at least from my perspective, to how can the federal government entities help with that? And I would almost look at the federal government entities as really well placed to be the guiders and supporters, and looking at how do you match federal priorities, federal funding programs, to the possibility and the capacity that can be leveraged by the vast network of citizen scientist people that are out there. And so, say as an example, if I went out in my local stream and I was really interested in looking after it, and I had a temperature monitor, maybe I just have a thermometer, and I go out every day and I write down the temperature of the stream. Temperature of streams is changing with climate change. It's important information in terms of knowing how good the water quality and the fish habitat might be to support our fish. But if all I do is write that down in my notebook and take it back and put it on a shelf and tell somebody I'm doing it, it doesn't do anything. But if we can take that information, plug it into a network, and get it to people who can use it to make better decisions, better investments, or better choices, it can support management and conservation, and it doesn't cost anything. I'm happy to drive out or walk past my local stream every day and work with my neighbors and say, we better send this information to somebody. But right now, we're not organized. We have some programs, the work that Dr. Morin was just speaking of as an example, that have been there for some time, and they're really, really good. But it's a fraction of what is possible if we start to look at it kind of like we look at hockey. Right? We've got lots of hockey going out there, and it feeds up to a great system, but someone has to organize it. And I think helping to organize it and then support it for the long term, not, $1 million in a new program, it isn't this great, and then it goes away. It just standard little bit of support and consistency, organizing it will go a long way.
Thank you so much for that testimony. Now moving on to the Liberal Member of Parliament, Madam Diab.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of our witnesses for appearing today to sort of enrich more the conversation on citizen science and sort of, give us important information that can assist us as parliamentarians. Ms. Morin, you are the President and CEO of Ocean Networks Canada. I come from Nova Scotia, which is Canada's ocean playground on our provincial vehicle license plate. So ocean is a very important element, not an economic driver, but also for many reasons in Nova Scotia as well, because we're surrounded by the four major bodies of water. So, question for you though: how do you recruit citizen scientists?
Well, the way that Ocean Networks Canada is working is to really engage with Indigenous communities, and in fact, we have a partnership with the Maritimes Tribal Council in Nova Scotia, and so it's really there's a keen interest in Indigenous communities to be those coastal stewards. So that's our primary focus at this time, and we think that because of the fact that among the small coastal communities in the country, many are Indigenous. So that's the main way that we do it. The other way that we do it is through education programs in schools, and that happens by basically bringing teachers together to explain how older youth can become part of citizen scientist programs. And once they have that, that way of doing things, they can typically stick with it.
Tell me a little bit more about the contribution of the Indigenous citizen scientists? And what projects
Yeah, so-
are they involved in? Go, please.
Yeah. So the program that we have we call it Community Fishers, and we provide a standard oceanographic instrument to a community. We provide training, and then that community, usually with leaders and youth together, set out to capture data, typically on a weekly basis, using their own boats, or in the Arctic, for example, go out on the ice and drilling a hole. And these are basically instruments that you lower down through the water column, then bring them back up. So you're collecting data on a regular basis at the same locations that are important to these communities. The important part, and I think Jason mentioned this, is to have some way to share those data. So Ocean Networks Canada is we have one of the best ocean sensor data systems in the world. All the data are readily moved from the instrument to basically a small computer. And then when the community member gets back to the internet at some location, it uploads directly to our data management system where we do all the QA/QC. And by the time that they get home, the data are available to them. So those are critically important elements that when the community knows they're collecting data of high quality and it's available to them right away, it is a win-win-win. And it's those pieces that are critically important to a successful citizen science program.
So my notes tell, or I think a couple of days ago, Minister Murray announced major funding over 5 years to Oceans Networks Canada to enhance world-class ocean monitoring system. I'm sure you're aware of that. But can you tell me how these funds will be spent, and are new citizen science projects being considered?
So I'll answer your second question first. And yes, new citizens, that's what our intention is, to expand citizen science programs, particularly community fishers, for the purpose of growing the Indigenous coastal communities to be truly the stewards of our coastline. And that is through the marine protected area efforts that are so ambitious and wonderful that the federal government has implemented for 30% by 2030. In terms of the funding that was announced by Minister Murray, and I was so delighted to be there, we're doing many things. So we also operate, in addition to citizen science programs and coastal observatories with communities, we operate large ocean infrastructure to monitor the ocean for many different things, but for the purposes of Fisheries and Oceans Canada's priorities, it's really understanding ocean currents for basically as part of improving marine safety and incident response. It's monitoring all aspects of where we have sensor systems to be understanding the impact of climate change on our oceans, to also then collect data associated with ocean noise, which has a negative impact on marine mammals. So by having real-time ocean noise data, and some of the coastal communities are collecting these data as well, that data helps us to mitigate the impact on marine mammals. So those are examples of the many things that we're doing with the funding we have, which we're so grateful for, and the benefits to not only scientific research, but the efforts that are a priority for the government of Canada.
Thank you. Mr. Hahn, you compared, I guess, citizen science to hockey. And obviously, Canada's known very much for hockey. How can we get more citizens more interested in citizen science, and particularly, I guess you talked about salmon, but it could be in anything. And you actually talked a lot about that. But is there anything more you can sort of give us that? And how can the government or parliamentarians help you? And I'm being told we're over, but I'm hoping someone else will get back to that.
That or a written response to the question would be appreciated. We are 31 seconds over on that one, but that's all right. Moving on to the next round is from the bloc, MP Blanchette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank the witnesses for being here with us on today's study. My first question is for Mr. Huang from the Pacific Salmon Foundation. I noticed your organization has been operating for over 30 years, since 1987. I think it's very important to conserve our ecosystems, and the Pacific salmon is part of this. You have many projects on citizen science, and you have volunteers that are collecting samples. I've also noticed that you receive a significant amount of funding from the federal government. Can you tell us how much you receive from the federal government to help you in your mission?
Well, I didn't sort of organize myself to bring that specific detail to committee today. I could certainly get back to committee on that in writing. I would say that I would frame it as there's kind of two kinds of funding that we tend to receive from the federal government. We apply for grants through large federal funding programs like the BC Salmon Restoration Innovation Fund, which is something that I think is in year 3 or 4 now, a joint program, significant program jointly run between the federal and provincial governments. But we also have a couple of things where our organization specifically receives support. So one of the ways we get funding from the federal government is through an agreement where when a fisher person goes fishing in the ocean and they want to catch a salmon, they have to buy a salmon conservation stamp. It costs a little bit more.
Ça répond partiellement à ma question.
That partially answers my question. I'll help you a little bit here. If you have a large budget, it's $11 million, and you receive 49% of your funding from the federal government, or federal support, and the federal government is part of this. I also noticed that you have a beautiful website, and you know what struck me is that your website is only available in English. So I'm wondering about this. How do you think you can engage the population? As far as I know, there are Francophone communities in British Columbia. How do you explain the fact that your communication, your data, your reports, and your websites are entirely in English? Do you not have an obligation? You're receiving funds from the federal government, but you can't communicate in both official languages?
I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I would say that we are open as the Pacific Salmon Foundation to doing our very best to be good stewards of resources and to be an organization that helps Canadians and helps British Columbians do what they would like to do to look after our precious salmon resources. I'd certainly be prepared to take considerations in that regard back to our organization and discuss that, and I'd say we're certainly open to it. But we do our very best to take every dollar that comes into our organization and make sure that it's invested wisely in things that are going to help our wild Pacific salmon.
Merci, Monsieur Wang.
Thank you, Mr. Huang. Thank you for being so open. But my question is this. You can receive up to $5 million in federal government grants, but you don't have an obligation to communicate both in English and in French, both official languages, in all of your communication. Is this true?
To the best of my knowledge, the commitments that we are asked to uphold when we are given resources from the federal government, from one source or another, do not require us to report back in both official languages. We do our very best to comply with all of the standards and obligations that are given to us. And if the federal government system were to ask us for that, I think we would be very happy to comply.
Merci, Monsieur Huang.
Thank you, Mr. Huang. Would you agree about this? Do you think that there's an inequity as to access to knowledge because you're taking taxpayer money? These taxpayers are Anglophones, Francophones, Allophones, but they don't have access to your website, to your data, and your knowledge. So how can we have citizen science if a part of the population that includes Francophones can't access your data, and this data is funded by public funds?
Well, I think that's a fair question. It's an important question. I'd highlight that our organization does get public funds, but not only public funds. We get a lot of funds from private entities as well. And we're mindful that we work with people and organizations that operate not just in both Canadian official languages. We have a large immigrant community in the Greater Vancouver area. We have First Nations and Indigenous entities that have elders that prefer to work in their native languages. And we don't have the solutions for all of that. We do our best. We do our utmost to be respectful, and we are prepared to adjust and evolve to the best of our ability.
Merci encore de votre.
Thank you again for being so open, Mr. Huang. I'm trying to get somewhere here. Does the government ask you to embrace the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your programs?
Well, I would say they don't ask us specifically, but my understanding is those are standards that we are asked to, when you apply for a grant from federal sources, there are questions in those grant applications that we have to answer to do our best to report out on how we can meet those obligations.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you. Would you agree then?
Fortunately, Mr. Blanchette. Now moving on to the NDP, Member of Parliament, Mr. Cannings.
Well, thank you, and thank you to both witnesses here this morning. I'd like to start with Mr. Wong, and just thank you for that passionate support you gave for citizen science. And, the allusion to hockey is useful, but I really, just this whole idea of Canadians that are out there. So many Canadians enjoy being out in the world doing various things, whether it's fishing or whether it's looking at birds or just being out on their boats. And this concept of, making sure that what they do, if we can just channel that into useful studies. So your organization would like to know more about the environment, the habitat that salmon are using. So how active are you in creating those programs, say just a program of measuring the temperature in creeks and rivers? Is those, I assume those kind of things are being evolved all the time, generated all the time by your organization, because that's where this power comes from.
Mr. Cannings, I would say yes to that. And I would even just expand it a little bit beyond what maybe typical people would think about when the idea is framed as citizen science. Citizen science is a nice way to frame it, but it can be even more than just science. It can be citizen stewardship, citizen participation, and it can include doing things that one would frame under the approach of science. And where we work here at the Pacific Salmon Foundation, we are always about, we don't do anything by ourselves. Everything we do is done in partnership and collaboration with others, and in particular with community organizations that I think from our operational perspective is increasingly active in involving First Nations communities, but also involving the broad network of other stewards that really want to be involved in looking after the natural resources here in this part of the country. And Mr. Cannings, I would say, people like you who have been advocates for natural resources and transferring knowledge and sharing that kind of information so that everybody can understand what we have in Canada helps us look after it better.
Well, thank you. And I'll turn to Dr. Moran and ask maybe a more general question. Just working with communities, there seems to be two main benefits, at least the way I see it, with citizen science. One is the fact that we can gather vast quantities of knowledge across large geographical areas over long periods of time much more easily using citizen sciences, using people who are volunteering their time. So there's that benefit, but it's also this benefit to the communities and the people themselves. And I just wonder if you could expand on those two benefits and how the federal government in specific could benefit itself. And
Yes, thank you for that question. I do think that expanding citizens, because I work in the ocean, and and I think we're all concerned about climate change, and climate change will be impacting our coast perhaps first, that expanding more citizen scientists along the coast will be beneficial to the country, gathering situational awareness information about our coastlines. And so one of the suggestions could be where for funding programs where there's competition, that like other elements that can be contributed, there could be not a requirement, but a higher ranking for proposals that incorporate a citizen science program in some way. In terms of the benefits, and I'll say just one other thing, working with the Indigenous communities for us also has shown that there's Indigenous knowledge that we can bring together with the new data that's collected. And we've been learning a great deal about the longer history of changes in our coastal ocean because of that partnership. So there's even more knowledge that gets brought to everyone's attention as we do that work. And in terms of the communities, really, it's the science technology, that the exposure to scientific methods and techniques is very exciting for the youth of these communities. And I'll just share one anecdote. In Cambridge Bay, one of the first youth that participated with us in 2012 graduated from high school, focused on science, and now works in science in the government of Nunavut. And so we're seeing the benefits of the work that we do together with the people in these communities that then increase capacity.
How much?
You got 41 seconds left.
41 seconds. Well, I'll just turn it back to Mr. Wong and, talk about that as well, the benefits to the citizen scientists and as well to the government. We need the data that your people could collect, and that sort of dual benefit, and how the government can take advantage of that.
Yeah, in
15
short,
seconds,
I would
please.
say there's a big exchange. It's a two-way relationship. The citizen scientists gain by being involved, and those that can use the data and apply it to the decisions and things that they have to do also gain. So it's a very much a co-benefit relationship, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you kindly. Now moving on to the 5-minute round, we start with Mr. Mazer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the witnesses for coming out today. Just a quick question. Do you know if citizen science includes nonprofit conservation organizations? And Dr. Wong? Or Mr. Wong?
Yeah, I wasn't a super good student at university, so I don't get to call myself doctor or anything. But I tend to look at the idea of citizen science as an idea, and I don't necessarily, when I relate to it, draw super sharp boundaries around it. I would say in our organization, the people that work here are professionals. We've got people with their PhDs, masters, kind of regular old educated people like me, but we work with a vast network of people that I would characterize as citizen scientists, because they have their day job isn't necessarily to do science on behalf of some activity or some endeavor, but they're willing to take part of their day or part of their week and do something that helps contribute to the network and capacity that we can harness to do a better job of gathering information that helps to inform some of our science-based questions and issues.
So is your organization considered a nonprofit conservation organization?
I think most people would describe it that way, yes.
It's well, it either is or isn't. Like, is it? I guess.
Well, we're a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit, whether you would call us a conservation organization or
like on the prairies.
We look at our.
Yeah, on the prairies, we'd have like Delta waterfowl organizations like that. Dr. Moran, do you have any comments on that?
I guess you're asking if Ocean Networks Canada is a conservation organization?
Well, the
Can you
citizen
clarify the
science,
question?
yeah. And do you consider nonprofit conservation organizations part of citizen science?
Well, I think they do. Those organizations do have a citizen science program. Ocean Networks Canada, we're a nonprofit. We don't consider ourselves a conservation organization. We operate infrastructure for scientific purposes, and we are basically agnostic on issues, but of course keenly interested on the important issue of our time, which is climate change.
Okay, thank you. I'll rest my time for Mr. Lobb.
For both our guests here, it may seem like a peculiar question, but who actually owns the data that is collected? Maybe Ms. Moran could start first.
Yes, that's a great question. And so for each of the communities that we work with, we have an agreement. In some cases, the communities want to be the owners. And we have an incredibly rich data system that follows strict principles, fair care, OCAP principles, and to ensure that, for example, if the Indigenous community wants to own those data, we work with them to follow the OCAP principles to ensure that we respect and share those data in ways that are basically controlled by them. And then some organizations are happy that Ocean Networks Canada, as a society, owns the data, and we then follow our fair principles that are international principles on data capture, archiving, and accessibility.
And Jason?
I would say my response would be very aligned with Dr. Moran's. On projects that we are involved with, I can give an example. We are operating a data system that has information on salmon populations and their habitat. Some of that data is pulled in from federal and provincial government sources. Some of it is generated from community sources. Some of that community information is First Nations community and local Indigenous knowledge. So some of those Indigenous entities are very comfortable with the information they provide being displayed publicly on our system, but our system also has capacity to have their information displayed only when they are comfortable sharing it, so they get to turn it on and off. So the suite of data that we have in our system is a combination of publicly available data as well as data that is being derived from local sources, and some of that is broadly public, and some of it has more limited access.
Thank you.
Thank you to our witness and to MP Lobb. Now moving on to MP Lausanne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. J'aimerais remercier.
I would like to thank our two witnesses who are here today. You've talked to us a lot about partnership with organizations and with citizen scientists. You also talk about collaboration with Indigenous communities. I experienced something very special this year in Quebec. On January 23rd, a community in Victoriaville in Quebec, which is one of the first cities with less than 50,000 citizens to have named a scientific advisor within at the municipal level. Here's my question. Given that municipalities are the ones who understand, municipalities and Indigenous communities are the ones who are most familiar with their territory, they understand the bodies of water best. Do you think the federal government should look into promoting municipalities creating such a position throughout Canada? We can start with Dr. Moran.
Well, that's a wonderful question. I would say that would be a wonderful thing to do. Just from our experience working with Indigenous communities, there's a very, very big discrepancy among those communities. So, for example, some have the capacity to invest in scientific studies to identify their priorities and what they need to do to protect their own coastlines, and then others don't. But if all of them had the potential to have scientific advisors and non-Indigenous communities as well, it would be of great benefit. The programs could be launched with a very much a more focused directive in terms of what are the priorities and needs. And so then, as Jason mentioned, the benefits back to the community would be much stronger.
Et pour vous, Monsieur Wang?
And for you, Mr. Huang?
Well, I would agree entirely with what Dr. Morin just said, and maybe just add a little bit in that I think it's a wonderful idea, and I would highlight that one of the most useful things that can be done to support science is to help people understand and interpret it. Science itself is a method. You ask a question, you do a study, you get some results. But what do you do with those results, and how do you interpret and apply them to issues that are important, to important decisions that you have to make? So I admire that the community of Victoriaville having the foresight to appoint a science officer. I think that's wonderful. I'd like to see more of that. But I would say not just at the municipal level, helping all entities better understand the science and interpret it so that they can use that information in the most informed and thoughtful way, I think would be excellent.
Quels sont vos liens?
Mr. Huang, you have many volunteers and an extraordinary amount within your organization. What is your connection with municipalities? What do municipalities do to help these researchers from the community?
It's variable. I would say, for the most part, at least in the work that I'm very familiar with, which is around salmon. Most municipalities that have salmon within their jurisdiction or area are very interested in the salmon resources. Salmon are in their rivers, their lakes, their streams. These are important areas to our communities. I would say, though, that the support is ad hoc. It's not structured. There's a sense of a value and appreciation for the work that's done. But I think there's a lot more that could be done in terms of helping from the municipal level to identify what are the priorities in that municipality. How could local governments and municipal governments develop just a little bit of structure, as I was speaking to in my opening comments, to help let citizen science or their citizens know, what can we use help with? How can you help us? What can we do with that information and turn that into something? So I think the openness is there, but I don't think it is activated as well as it could be.
Thank you so much. Now moving on to our 2.5-minute rounds. We have from the block, MP Blanchette.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Ms. Morin. Thank you for being here with us today for this important study. I explored your organization, and I think your work is extraordinary. You seem very competent and knowledgeable about marine tectonic matters. I also support the mission of your organization. Ms. Morin, I also perused your website and your annual reports, and I noted that your website is also not entirely bilingual. However, I do want to note that you do have some French portions. There are parts of your website that say French translation coming soon. We don't know when soon is, but I would like to know when that is. Ms. Morin, with all due respect, you receive important sums from the federal government. We're talking here about over $25 million, and that's only over 1 year. So I'm wondering, humbly, how many millions of dollars do you need to have a bilingual website and to have communications in both official languages?
Yes, thank you for that question. And we have been slow at translating everything for both official languages. But we just received. So, for example, we have had this as a priority, and you can say $25 million a year is quite a large sum. But to give you context, we are equivalent to a U.S. observatory, whereby Their funding is about 1/3 greater than ours. And so we are very efficient and good at what we do. But of course, we are dedicated to making that happen soon. Our new funding will be starting April 1 of this year from the Canada Foundation for Innovation in our proposal to them. So for example, when we put a proposal in, we identify all the aspects that we need to do to move forward. There's been no full requirement of this, but in our proposal this time we included that. That's why it says coming soon. So you'll see we're going to continue to move forward with that, and we're getting great advice
Je vais devoir vous interrompre, Madame.
I'll have to interrupt you. My apologies. I've also noted that your organization embraces the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would like to know if linguistic diversity, including French, is something you're hoping to uphold.
I'm sorry, we're already
Absolutely.
over time
Absolutely.
on that one.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you
So
to
yes,
submit
and we'd
a
love to
written-
talk more about that.
Yes, submit a written
Okay.
response to that question if you would. Now moving on to the final 2.5-minute spot, MP Cannings.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to turn to Dr. Moran again, and this time talking about, big data. You mentioned 1.2 petabytes. We hear a lot about gigabytes and terabytes, but you don't often hear petabytes. So I'm just curious, and I might have to say my nephew, J.J. Carr Cannings, was an intern, I think, with Ocean Network Canada in a software. He's some big data software engineer, so he was working on that. So I'm just wondering about that data, where it goes, who has access to it, how it's used. I mean, I assume it's kind of open source data, and scientists from around the world can access it. And can you perhaps give us some examples of how that's used?
Absolutely. So we measure everything from temperature to video data of the deep sea. And so the data are openly available for the most part, except, as I mentioned, for Indigenous communities who want to protect their own data. But most of it is open data following the federal government's policy. And it's used by educators, scientists, policymakers, and citizen scientists. And so the way they're used, so they analyze the data for understanding things like climate change, to understand seismicity and tectonics, to understand the chemistry of the ocean. Those are examples of the scientific benefits, but we have been now putting together materials that are important for educators in schools, packages of information that just get shared and are easy to use by teachers. We have packages that are very simple to use by communities who capture their own data. So we are working hard at ensuring that the data are available and easy to use for every kind of user of ocean data. And I have to say that we have been growing our user base internationally. About 50% are Canadian, but 50% are international. And that's because the particular footprint we have of monitoring is the most diverse range of marine environments of any particular location on the planet. So we can understand many aspects of the ocean just from our data archive. And what's coming up is using the data for advancing machine learning and learning more about the ocean through implementing machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Thank you so much. We are out of time, and a big thank you to our witnesses and members for the questions posed. We'll now be suspended briefly before moving on to our next panel. Call this morning meeting back to order. I'd like to make a few comments before we start the second half. For our people that are taking part online, just remember that interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen to either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, can you please use your earpieces and select the desired channel. As a reminder that all comments should be addressed to the chair, and I would like to now start with our presenters for 5-minute rounds. If they would do their best to keep it within 5 minutes. At the tail end of what you think is 5 minutes, if you glance up and I'm giving you one of these, please just wrap her up. So to start off with, for the first 5 minutes, we have Mr. Nadeau.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the committee, hello. Thank you so much for inviting us here this morning, and we accepted your invitation with a great pleasure. My name is Patrick Nadeau. I am the president and CEO of Birds Canada. With me is Jody Allaire, our director of citizen science and community engagement. Birds Canada is a national nonprofit organization. For over 60 years, we have been working to improve the knowledge, appreciation, and conservation of birds in Canada. This morning, as I looked out my window, I saw a chickadee standing firm in our Ottawa winter weather, and many across the country have done the same thing. I know this because according to Statistics Canada, nearly 10 million Canadians have at least one bird feeder in their backyard. Birds are important to us, and for many of us, they are a beautiful gateway to nature. However, it is alarming to note that we have lost 3 billion birds in Canada since 1970. That's almost 1 bird out of every 3 birds. This decline reveals the global effects of converging climate and biodiversity crises. Our ability to assess the magnitude of these decline is due in large part to the work of so-called citizen scientists. Birds Canada manages 44 citizen science programs involving more than 74,000 volunteers. This is the equivalent of 2,000 full-time professionals. To our knowledge, this is one of the largest networks of citizen scientists in the country.
partners, Birds Canada collaboratively manages programs such as eBird, which had over 1.75 million checklists submitted in 2022 alone. Or one of the longest-running citizen science programs in the world, the Christmas Bird Count, which engages tens of thousands of volunteers every year. Citizen science is accessible to all, from neophytes to experts. Beginners can participate in Project Feeder Watch and report the birds they see in their backyards. Or, at the cottage perhaps, they can participate in the Canadian Lakes Loon Survey, which tells us how our emblematic loons are faring across the country. More seasoned birders might participate in provincial breeding bird atlases. These are comprehensive bird surveys, kind of like the census we do for humans. By comparing results of atlases conducted at 20-year intervals, we gain understanding of the changes affecting an entire region. Such an undertaking would be simply impossible without the contribution of citizen scientists. Enthusiasm for citizen science is increasing. We know this because we see it in our numbers, with record high participation in our programs and growing steadily every year. Citizen scientists help deliver real scientific and conservation impact. In 21-22, data from Birds Canada programs were used for 533 peer-reviewed publications. Citizen science data also helped to identify Canada's key biodiversity areas, which were officially launched this past year, and to produce crucial report cards like the State of Canada's Birds. And the list goes on and on. But citizen science does more than just generate data. Volunteering as citizen science strengthens our connections to nature. It gets us outside with great benefits for physical and for mental health. And perhaps most importantly, citizen science can be a gateway to greater engagement with the issues in our communities. Many of the citizen science programs at Birds Canada have been supported by the Government of Canada, and for this we're very grateful. Our programs directly contribute to federal objectives and mandates, such as conserving migratory birds. We have a strong track record of leveraging government investments, more than doubling these contributions through private gifts, including, in fact, many charitable donations from the citizen scientists themselves. We hope that by now it's clear. We believe citizen science is essential, and we want to see it continue to flourish in this country. With that, we'd like to leave you with 3 short recommendations aimed at the federal government. Our first recommendation is to invest, of course, in citizen science programs, including their backbone infrastructure. And by that, we mean the tools needed for these programs to work effectively and at scale. For example, the modern technological and marketing tools needed to communicate with thousands of volunteers. Perhaps this is something NSERC could support as part of its mandate to promote science to Canadians. Our second recommendation is to support more citizen science opportunities at federally managed sites. For example, Parks Canada's proposed network of new urban national parks. This would provide co-benefits for human health and engaging visitors in conservation action. And to wrap up, our third recommendation, which is to continue support for citizen science programs focused specifically on birds. Birds are recognized as indicators of the state of our environment and are very cost-effective to monitor. Remember those 10 million Canadians who have backyard bird feeders? To us, there's no doubt that among them, we have the citizen scientists of tomorrow. We just have to show them the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now moving on to Dr. Reynolds, that has won the Backdrop Award for the best backdrop on Zoom today. Mr. Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I appreciate the invitation to speak to you today, and I'm coming to you from the traditional territory of Coast Salish people in southwestern BC, and I'm a professor of conservation biology, and I'm also at Simon Fraser University. I'm also just recently finished 4 years as the chair of COSEWIC, the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada. That has given me a vantage point to see how we can use the power of citizen science for conservation assessment, and I'm going to speak a little bit about that. But first, I just want to give you an idea of the scope of what we're dealing with. Increasingly, we tend to call citizen science community science, but it is the collection of scientific information by volunteers. And as Patrick Nadeau said, it's not new. It's been going on for a long time. What is new is the availability of online platforms that can collect this data and display it back to people in a very friendly and useful way. And to pick up just on this comment about eBird, which is an online portal where birders can submit their checklists, as of right this second, around the world, 16,826 checklists have been submitted to eBird. That's today. As of today, over 16,000 checklists. It's not even a weekend. So the power of citizen scientists to collect huge amounts of information really shouldn't be underestimated. Now, I particularly want to speak about iNaturalist because it is really the game changer, in my opinion, for citizen science. Unlike eBird, it collects data on all species, plants, animals, fungi, and it's based on photos. So anybody can upload a photograph of any species, get it mapped on the platform, and then iNaturalists will even use artificial intelligence to suggest what it is if you don't know. And then others can see your observation and they can chime in and help with your observation. The New York Times recently had an article on it in which it called iNaturalist the nicest place online. And the reason is because people are very supportive in encouraging each other to learn to identify things and to celebrate their successes when they find interesting species. So in Canada, nearly 10 million observations have been submitted to iNaturalist. That means photos or audios or both. For the whole planet, we have 2.5 million people registered with iNaturalist. They've submitted 126 million observations. So the use of the site has tripled in the last 3 years, and it is now the biggest citizen science platform in the world. So I want to spend a little bit of time now for the final part of my talk, just to tell you examples of what we can do with this information. You heard some examples from Patrick Nadeau and earlier from Jason Wong. I'll give you an example. I'm the co-leader of a program that promotes the use of iNaturalist to do biodiversity surveys in provincial parks in British Columbia. The co-leader of this program is Dr. Brian Starzomski from the University of Victoria. And we've partnered with the province, we're doing this as volunteers, we've partnered with the province of BC through their BC Parks Agency, who are funding us, to hire teams of students who we send out across the province camping in provincial parks and taking an average of 1,000 or 1,500 photographs every day. And these are some of the best young naturalists in Western Canada. These are really the best of the best. It is the best job in the world, as you might imagine. And we have been able to choose from very good naturalists. We're mentoring them. They're exploring nature. We do the occasional bio blitz as well to promote the use of citizen science for people to engage in nature. And then the other example I can give you is from my past work with COSEWIC. We are the federally mandated body of volunteer scientists who assess the status of species for potential inclusion in the Federal Species at Risk Act. And COSEWIC's status reports are increasingly being populated with data from citizen science, especially birds to a very large extent, but many others as well. And iNaturalist is actually very, very prominent in this. We refer to iNaturalist all the time to discover where species are, what their distributions are, key things that we can use to try to help assess their status. So I'll just conclude by saying I think federal support could operate at the grassroots level by sponsoring bio-blitzes to engage people, and also at the upper level with places like NatureServe Canada, which promote and disseminate citizen science information. So thank you very much.
Thank you kindly for both of our witnesses. To start off our 6-minute round, we have from the Conservatives, Member of Parliament, Mr. Mazur.
Sure. Mr. Nadeau, in your opening remarks, you referred to the 70s and how many birds have been lost since then. How far back does that data go, and why the 70s? Like, I've heard many organizations refer to those days.
Yeah, sure. I'll take that. So 1970 is sort of the nice round number where a lot of sort of the earliest, best data really comes from. And that's really, a lot of that is breeding birds survey data. So that's one of the federal government programs administered by Environment Climate Change Canada. And it's one of the key citizen science bird monitoring programs in North America. From 1970 onward, that's where we have a huge increase in the amount of data sets that we can use to pull, significant results from. So 1970 is generally that benchmark going back, and a lot of studies you see don't often go too far before that, although there are data sets that go longer. And the Christmas bird count data set, as you heard from Jeff LeBaron on Tuesday, that's over 100 years old. And within our own database, we have data from Canada going back over 120 years.
And I would be interested in that, like if you could provide to the committee the data sets from citizen science and versus government, like scientists, like how does those overlap, and over the years, how has that evolved? And how citizen science is either becoming more important to the program or less important?
I would say definitely becoming more important, for sure.
If you could submit that in some data, just some reports that you've done internally, that'd be great. Dr. Reynolds, you referred to the eBird, which is a cool app, actually. I've been on it trying to figure it out. But you also talked about the data that comes in and how many people you have just submitting data. How do you ensure that that's accurate?
It's the individuals probably do make some mistakes, and so the strength of that data set is through the brute force of large numbers. So did a person, really see 6 chickadees, or did they see 8? That whether they got the right number of chickadees won't make a difference when you have this much data. So it's allowing high-level visualizations of migration, for example, of distributions, things like that. And even though individual records may well have errors, because it's a good point, and it's something that the scientists who analyze those data think about a lot.
We had in here, COCORAS in here earlier this week, and there was actually, they do have a regime of making sure that the data is accurate before it gets put into ECCC. So there is no system in place to make sure that that's actually accurate. You're just taking people's word for it.
There's one other safeguard. So I should explain, I'm a birder, so I use the app. I don't have any involvement with the program itself. If somebody puts in something that is crazy, so if they say they saw a dodo or something like that, that will get flagged, and there will be a regional reviewer who will come to their attention, and they can ask them about it. So, and that's an extreme example, obviously, but if it's something really out of place or a huge number of something that never occurs in those sorts of numbers, it does get flagged, and the regional reviewer can ask them to correct it. And if they don't correct it, they can simply remove that from the main data set.
Thank you. Back to Birds Canada. How is you mentioned about how your organization's funded. Just a little bit more, expand on that, please.
Sure. So we're managing an overall budget of about $9 million at Birds Canada and growing. We have 6 program areas. So the program area that where most of our citizen science work happens is called Assessing the State of Canada's Birds. And that program area runs about $2 to $2.5 million a year. The federal government is a significant contributor to that, and we're very grateful, but overall it's still less than half of that contribution. So, philanthropic contributions and a lot of individual donors, and that's something that I think is really interesting to emphasize. In the charitable space, oftentimes you'll hear that individual donors are the ones that are closest to the work, and so these citizen scientists are not only volunteering, but in many cases they're also financially contributing.
My Conservative colleague, Marty Morantz, introduced the Supporting Canadian Charities Act last year. Bill C-240 would have incentivized Canadians to donate more money to charities such as yours that we're talking about. Experts projected this legislation would have increased annual donations to Canadian charities by $200 million. $200 million. And then, unfortunately, though, the Liberals and the NDP killed this bill by voting against it. So how important is charitable contributions to your organizations like yours?
Those are vital contributions, and I'd point out, I can't vouch for the fact that this would be the latest number, but the last I've seen are somewhere to the tune of 4% is the slice of the pie that the environmental charitable sector receives out of all donations. So given, the twin crises of climate change and of biodiversity collapse, 4% of the total pie is not a huge number. So anything that charitable organizations can do to build momentum and build support from individuals and to diversify their funding base, of course, is welcome.
That's it, Chair.
Thank you so much to our witness and for MP Mazur's questions. Now moving on to MP Collins for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses for your appearance today at committee. I want to first start with the technology that both organizations referenced. There was the eBird app that was referenced, and then Dr. Reynolds, you talked about your iNaturalist app, which I really would have liked to have had a couple of summers ago when I walked into some poison oak. But I would ask in the context of building capacity amongst the citizen science community, what kind of investments should the federal government be looking at in terms of the technology that you're using, not just to build capacity within the organization, but to get to better gather the information and better track the data? And so, Dr. Reynolds, I'll start with you, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Nadeau and Mr. Allaire.
Yes, thank you for that question. When we had Canada's 150th anniversary, there was funding, I believe it was federal funding, to sponsor bioblitzes. And these are community events where people go out and try to find as many and photograph as many plants and animals as possible in a given period of time, like a weekend or a day or whatever. And iNaturalist is the go-to app for reporting on these. I think that was probably very successful. There were a lot of bioblitzes that came out of that, and that's a way to engage people who otherwise might not have ever heard of a bioblitz. So they might be people who like to go hiking, or they're casually interested in the birds they see, but to actually get them out there with like-minded people, I think that can be a very good way to get people into it. And in fact, there is right now, internationally, there's something called the City Nature Challenge that iNaturalist runs on a long weekend once a year, and they see a big uptake in people who sign up for the app from that. So I think that's one way you can get to the grassroots level.
So I think investment in the infrastructure of these programs is obviously really, really key. And at Birds Canada, we have a variety of programs. We run about 44 different citizen science programs and engages about 74,000 volunteers every year. And in order to do that, you do need proper infrastructure, everything from our database system, and we've got a very sophisticated database called Nature Counts, and it's actually one of the largest biodiversity databases in the world. And we house the data there. We have lots of training involved with all of our programs, whether they're structured or unstructured citizen science, aiming for that high data quality, which is obviously really, really important. But all this takes funding, and all this takes a lot of energy and a lot of expertise to make sure not only are we providing the best experience for volunteers, but also that we're collecting the best data to have the most impact on birds as possible.
And if I might, I would just add that's kind of what we're getting at in our first recommendation when we're speaking of sort of supporting the backbone infrastructure. So just to give you an example, when these programs are successful and they're scaled, we're now talking about potentially thousands of Canadians that are participating in these programs. So imagine trying to maintain interactions and keeping that many volunteers engaged. You need to have a back end that can actually automate some of these things, or even just how do you send an email to 3,000 people to tell them when it's time to go monitor X species, So that backbone infrastructure, oftentimes it's just an initial investment to set it up, and then it can be used for many years and for many programs. But there is kind of this behind the scenes work that needs to happen, especially if you're scaling these programs.
Thanks for that. I really liked your recommendation as it relates to access to federal lands. And as a former Conservation Authority board member, I know there's a cost sometimes to visiting some of the best natural areas we have, whether it's in a municipality, a province, or the country. And so I was very intrigued with your recommendation that suggests that there be some support for federally managed sites. And I think you could probably extend that to provincial areas as well, and local conservation authorities and parks. Mr. Reynolds, just on the recommendation that Birds Canada has provided there, do you support that concept there? And I read an article today in the local paper, there's the great backyard bird count that's coming for the Family Day weekend, and so I would use that as an example. If I was to suggest to my kids that we take some time out on Family Day to go out and undertake a count, there's probably a cost. There would be a cost for me to visit some local conservation authorities, and so what role could the government play in terms of reducing those costs and maybe breaking down some of the barriers that people have to natural areas? I'll ask that of you, Mr. Reynolds, and then I'll go to Mr. Nadeau and Mr. Allaire.
Well, for events like the Great Backyard Bird Count and the City Nature Challenge, which go on, these are generally run not at the federal level, although they could certainly benefit from federal funding. And I think the way to reduce costs would be if there is some funding made available to make them happen. And that is what happened during the Canada's 150th anniversary. There was funding made available for people to do the organization, the advertising. I don't know if people sort of received, I don't think they were paying the participants per se, but they certainly were making it a lot easier for them to participate. I'm not sure what exactly the barriers are that we're talking about for people getting access to lands. Are we talking about, if I may clarify, we're talking about travel costs or camping? Is that the sort of
It'd be
concern
just the cost of getting into a park and covering your admission to whatever area we're talking about.
I see. Yes, I haven't really thought about it, to be honest, but if a park, a national park or a provincial park wanted to do a BioBlitz to encourage a very large number of people to come there, I do wonder whether there could be some sort of subsidy of camping fees or something like that. Manning Provincial Park in British Columbia, one of our most popular parks, has various annual events encouraging people to come, and it might be possible that there could be some sort of reduction in fees to actually participate in them, but it's something I haven't really thought through.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Now moving on to MP Blanchette for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank the witnesses that are here for the second hour of this important committee. My question is for Birds Canada. Mr. Nadeau, thank you for being here with us in person today. Mr. Nadeau, I would like to underscore your commitment. I know that you have quite the track record in terms of involvement. You have created the largest network in the world of citizen scientists that are tracking microplastics. It's very important, and thank you. I would like to talk about citizen science. In your opening remarks, you mentioned certain recommendations regarding infrastructure in managed sites that could be managed by the federal government, or also supporting citizen science programs. Can you tell us more about the programs that the federal government could have to support citizen science programs? I'm referring to something that already exists. There are Quebec research funds in Quebec that are called Engagement and that call on citizens who are interested in leading their own projects to encourage participatory science in Quebec. But there are very few similar programs elsewhere in Canada. There has been progress in Quebec. They're cutting edge, but I was wondering if this is a model that could inspire others and that could be deployed by the federal government. Thank you for your question. It's very interesting. For us, citizen science is science. So when we talk about promoting science among the population, the federal government has that mandate, among others, through the NSERC. But so why not have other programs like that already promote science among young people, school-age children? So why not promote that kind of science among the population at large? I think it's an inspiring program, and it should inspire others. Can you tell us more about other points? You talked about infrastructure. What could we do tangibly to support infrastructure that would help mobilize citizen scientists? Well, when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about digital infrastructure to support these programs. Here's an example. There's a platform that we are perfecting that will allow us to provide training to a large number of volunteers at the same time. It's a digital platform, kind of like online class platforms. These technologies have evolved tremendously. They're already expensive to purchase, and this is the kind of support we need. When we receive funding for citizen science, usually it's for a given species. There isn't really any funding for the infrastructure to support that kind of action. So we need some more behind-the-scenes support. So you need funding to launch digital infrastructure and then encourage citizen science. You talked about managed sites. Is this for birds or what else? Can you tell us how the federal government can help you in your mission? And how can you get the community involved? I think we have to go meet citizens. At Birds Canada, we say that birds and bird watching is for everyone. There are many ways to tackle this issue, but one would be to reduce barriers to access. So how to do this in sites that are managed by the federal government? How can we reduce barriers? Here are a few examples. It could be to create programs for people that have never done this or even thought about becoming citizen scientists. So we have to create programs. We have to demonstrate that it's not just for experts with 25 years of experience. So programs, access. People need to be able to access these applications or these training programs. So I think access is a really big issue. Earlier, you were talking about funding programs to operate your organization. I'm thinking about the Conseil Jeunesse that published a report a few years ago that was seeking to engage young people. But then from there, we don't have much vision, action, or programs that will engage young people through federal government departments. What can we do to engage the government, influence public policy to ensure that science becomes a priority, but also how can we popularize it? How can we make the population involved after that? We know that young people are very interested. Our numbers are going up, and that's because young people are being included in these figures. I could tell you about Gavin, who's 8 years old. He participated in his first bird count, Christmas bird count at age 8. Since then, he's been a volunteer and he is running a program in his area. He also does reviews for eBird, so he tries to catch mistakes that other people are making. And this is all before he finishes high school. So there are kids like Gavin who just need a bit of a boost or an entrance to find citizen science. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for both individuals there. I'm moving on to the last round of the 6-minute spot is MP Cannings.
Well, thank you, and I'd like to thank all three of you for being here. It's really great to see you, and I just wanted to start by picking up on what Mr. Mazier was saying about quality control and maybe diving into that, because I think if we look at the programs of Birds Canada, for instance, there's some very, very impressive quality control that goes on behind the scenes. You know, full disclosure, I've been part of that for many years. But it's not only, you know, experts looking for things, but increasingly with these huge amounts of data coming in, you know, those controls, the limits as to what you can report are being calculated by machine learning. So just if you could, maybe Jody, if you could expand on that, what goes on behind the scenes in eBird and Christmas bird count and other programs in a quick manner to make sure that we're getting good data.
Sure. So we have a real diversity of citizen science programs. You know, some very structured and more rigorous, others more entry-level programs to engage the next people into science and citizen science. And with all of those programs, what is sort of a unifying factor is that data quality is taken very, very seriously. And, you know, there have been hundreds and hundreds, thousands of scientific papers published citing citizen science data. And the reason for that is that it is now broadly accepted this is high quality data and it has become a cornerstone in the biological field. And just as an example, in terms of what we do internally for our programs, whether they're breeding bird atlases, whether it's the Canadian Lakes Loon Survey or eBird, which is, we manage eBird in Canada and we manage Christmas bird count in Canada. We use rigorously tested protocols. We provide intensive training. We incorporate data filters and we regularly review data quality and, which is very important, implement onboarding for volunteers to move to more challenging programs as they go. And all of this is to obviously enhance the experience for the volunteers, but it also allows us to collect rigorous data that we can make impact for birds, and especially with onboarding and getting more people to take on more complex citizen science programs, that enables us to collect even more relevant and more pertinent data to help make big conservation decisions.
Well, thank you. And I just now like to turn to Dr. Reynolds and kind of ask the same thing about iNaturalist. I know that's, one of your favorite platforms, and I have to blame you for getting me addicted to iNaturalist. A few years ago, during COVID, I went out with your team there in provincial parks, and it was quite a life-changing experience, I have to say. And now I'll admit to actually having taken a picture of a centipede in a briefing meeting in the Confederation building just to find out what this huge centipede was crawling around the floor. But just to get back to this quality control, I think the really fascinating, one of the many fascinating things about iNaturalist for me is that when you post your pictures on iNaturalist, and iNaturalist will take an AI guess as to what it is, almost immediately there are experts from around the world will come in and say, this is actually such and such, or yes, you're right. And so there's this real, these are citizen scientists who are real scientists who are volunteering their time to make sure that quality control is there. And they're gaining so much. I mean, that's amazing. Again, iNaturalist is expanding this knowledge of little-known species because there's so many people involved. I don't know if there's a question in there, but if you can expand on that aspect of experts being part of that in iNaturalist.
Yes, the reason the New York Times said it was one of the nicest online platforms is because of the way people do support each other and help out with that. And we've all experienced all kinds of examples where we will misidentify something, put it up as something else, something that and then it gets corrected quite quickly and in a very supportive way. I once found a small orchid in the Yukon, which I called a common species, and a high school student in the eastern U.S. said, no, it's such and such, and it turns out it was a new record of that orchid for the Yukon. So to be corrected by a kid in high school is actually a pretty neat experience because it just shows you the level of quality control that goes on. And so studies have shown that eventually most errors do eventually get corrected, and because there's a photo or an audio, then anybody can evaluate the evidence and straighten it out. So it's great for discovering species that aren't where we thought they were. But again, you can look at widespread distributions increasingly well now. And there, it doesn't matter if there's the odd error, it still gives you the range map.
30 seconds. Okay, just if you can continue there and maybe say a bit more about how iNaturalist itself is funneling into Kasiwik, which hasn't had too much data from obscure species until now, and I'm guessing it's been a bit of a game changer there too.
Within 10 seconds, please.
It has been. In the last few years, we've gone up to about 10 or 15% of our status reports use iNaturalist data. It's the first place people often go when they're trying to decide whether it's worth paying attention to a potentially threatened species.
Thank you so much. Now moving on to the 5-minute round, we'll hear from Member of Parliament Ben Lobb.
Thanks very much. For both organizations, I'm just curious, when you do a publication or you produce a report, how do you decide what you're going to include in that report? Is it a board that decides? Is it staff that decides? Is it the funding agency that decides what you're actually going to put together in a report or what have you?
Yeah, sure.
Did you want to go ahead?
Oh, sorry, John.
Okay. No, go ahead, Jody.
Great to see iNaturalist featured on here, by the way. We're all addicted. So just so I can interpret your question about reporting, we report on all of our birds on a very regular basis through program reports. We also, all of our data is contributed to the State of Canada's Birds report, which comes out every few years and is sort of the health card of our bird populations. And I highly recommend reading a copy of that report, because it is a real wake-up call as to how in trouble Canada's birds are. But we also do lots of reporting through published papers, academic papers. And just to give example, from 2021-2022, Birds Canada's data and information has been used for 533 peer-reviewed publications. The bulk of that is citizen science data that is being used. And of which 121 were particularly impertinent to understanding climate change impact on biodiversity. So we do report regularly. It's very important for getting awareness out on the issues, but it also underpins one of our core values, and that is open data. We help collect, we help create programs so that volunteers can collect rigorous data, and then we do our best to make sure that data is out there and open and accessible so that everyone can use it to make conservation decisions, whether you're publishing a paper or making a change in policy.
John, is it about the same for you folks as well?
It's a little bit different because I'm in the, well, for Kasiwik, speaking on behalf of Kasiwik, I guess in some ways it is similar. The scientists on the committee will decide what are the best data that we need in order to understand what the status of a species is. And those data are very often, as we've heard, citizen science data. And in the case of birds, there is citizen science data in just about every single status report we ever do on birds. And much of it is the kind that you've already heard about already. As a research scientist, there I have well, it's a similar sort of decision, and it would be something that I and my co-authors would do. We'd say, are these the right data to answer our question? And we just make that decision on our own.
The other thing is that the State of Canada's Birds that was published in 2019, I think it was. And I can't remember if it was John's or that it was your organization that did it. But I'm just curious, when you look at a report like that, there's a lot of comments in there about agriculture and things like that, fair enough, pesticide use. But I think there wasn't a whole lot of information on the true impact of urban sprawl. And the other thing is, I was just curious about when you're looking at these things, and maybe this is beyond the scope of what you folks are focused on, but in the area I represent, there's got to be 300 or 400 wind turbines that there wasn't there 20 years ago. And of course, my area is right along the Great Lakes, agriculture, woodlots, and you know, there's really no mention in that report. Fair enough, maybe it's beyond the scope. So I'm just wondering, in some things like urban sprawl and in areas where there's a lot of wind turbines that do impact bird populations and migratory flow, is there any point or thoughts of including that in another report or stating the impact of that? Just curious what either one thinks about that.
Sure, I can go first. So there are a variety of impacts that affect birds. And there was a publication in Avian Conservation Ecology, which is the journal that we co-publish here in Canada, looking at human-caused mortality factors of birds. And it did document all the biggest mortality factors facing our birds, you know, from a human perspective, you know, and sure, like transmission line collisions, wind turbines were certainly on there. The most significant, though, are free-roaming cats. Outdoor cats kill about 100 million birds per year in Canada. Window collisions, again, on average, window collisions kill 25 million birds per year in Canada, whether that's through lights being left on when they shouldn't or bad building code designs that aren't in place for proper window fittings. But the big challenges in those reports really have to deal with climate change and habitat loss, you know, are sort of another level of threat facing a lot of these birds. And the State of Canada's Birds Report is a distillation of the numbers and identifying the groups of birds that are most affected. It is then our job to follow up to find out what are the correlating factors for those declines.
Thank you kindly. Now moving on to the last member of Parliament for.
They have a written submission to that answer then too?
Mr. Nadeau, if you have a desire to put a written response, you can as well. So on to the last member to question on this round is MP Salsa.
Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate all of you being here and making your presentations. When you reference this international engagement where all these hits are happening on the website, are you talking about? You are talking about the e-platform for iNaturalist. Is that what you're talking about? Is that where all that incoming is coming from?
The incoming example I gave you was eBird, which is the standard global platform for submitting checklists of birds. Since I told you that 16,000 checklists had been submitted today, that's out of date. It's now 18,400. So 2,000 more have been submitted in the time that we've been speaking.
Actually funds it. Who manages that? Like, who pays for it?
Yes, it's Cornell University. It's run out of Cornell, and they fundraise for that.
Okay. And I see
so,
iNaturalist is California and National Geographic, I believe, I just saw on the website. So there's a lot of international engagement. And before us, you're asking us to support Canadian-made, and these presumably has some intellectual property, some value. And I'm interested in the Canadian content in order to continue to promote a number of areas. One, having lived in Toronto, we used to have these hawks perch themselves on our windowsills, and they bring their kill, right? And yellowtails or redtails, I can't recall which is which. It was amazing to watch, and there were a family of them right at Queen's Park, nestled in there. And then there's the peregrine falcons that some of the cement plants down in Mississauga are trying to protect. Even the native birds, those doves that show up at certain parts, they're beautiful, and they're nestled together. So I, to your point, do appreciate the work you're doing and appreciate then seeing some of this wildlife in our backyards and in our community. And in the Rattray Marsh Conservation Area near where I live, there's bird watchers everywhere. It's a big deal. So my question then is this notion that, Patrick, you were mentioning about breeding. How do we... Ben Lobb was talking about the urban situation and the stresses that's bringing upon us, eating away at some of this area of breeding capacity. What are we doing? Like, how is it that we're promoting education or enablement for some of these birds to thrive?
Good question. And I mean, it also connecting back to Mr. Lobb's question about what drives our decisions about what we're going to do with all this citizen science data. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, our organization exists to conserve birds and to recover these birds that are part of this biodiversity collapse. We started by telling you today that we've lost 3 billion birds since 1970 in North America. So those birds that you're describing that you're seeing in Toronto and Mississauga, we want you to be able to continue to see those into the future, right? The trends aren't looking good. So all our citizen science programming is set up in that way so that the outcomes can influence conservation. So just to give you one example, just recently, with the help of the federal government, we launched Canada's network of key biodiversity areas. So these are basically like the crown jewels for biodiversity in Canada. These are the most important hotspots for biodiversity in Canada. The reason we and our partners are able to map out where those places are is directly because of citizen science. And so thanks to citizen science, we've now mapped out these key biodiversity areas, and those areas are now directly informing, for example, Canada's 30 by 30 target that the world has just agreed to at COP15. And so these are direct conservation, real world conservation impacts that the citizen science data is having.
And Jody, how do we... I mean, I look at urban sprawl, and certainly in southern Ontario with the stresses that are bringing upon us with the Greenbelt now and engagement. A lot of conservation discussions. A lot of people seem to be aware of it. how are we able to prescribe controls to support it? I mean, there is, and it's a constant battle that's been going on for centuries, obviously, and to your point, since the 1970s, we have a massive reduction in birds and a huge increase in urbanization.
Yes. So, like, certainly, you know, I can't really get into the specifics of how the sprawl is going to have particular impacts. Obviously, it's going to have very negative impacts. And I think one of the solutions under the theme of citizen science, one of the solutions and one of the things that we try to promote is engaging more people directly. And this is the beauty of citizen science, right? So it helps us collect vast amounts of data of a really high quality to conserve birds, but it gives people a glimpse of the scientific process and makes it accessible. But the big one for me, and I think touches on your question, is that it builds connections to the subject matter. It helps bridge that disconnect from the natural world, which is a big problem in our society. And it creates a community
I'm sorry,
of
we're
engaged
out of
volunteers
time on this
as well.
one, but you're more than welcome to write a fuller answer after the committee. Now, moving on to the final round of 2.5 minutes, we have MP Blanchette.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will continue my questions with Mr. Nadeau. You mentioned twice data that cannot be ignored. We can't be insensitive to this situation. The fact that in North America, since 1970, 1 out of every 4 birds has been lost. 3 billion birds. That demonstrates how important it is to protect our ecosystems and biodiversity and how we have to protect those, and that science is the way to protect them. I would like to underscore your organization's efforts. There's engagement that we've noticed. That's extraordinary. I have a broad question. How can public policy help you more? How can it help promote citizen science? How can we engage more volunteers? So that's my first question for you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'd like to come back on the 3 billion birds. I can't talk about this without getting shivers. I'm not talking about Jacques Cartier's era. We were all here, most of us in the room in 1970s. We have to act. But what we know is that the causes of this decline is man. However, man can also provide a lot of solutions. So there's a downward trend, but we do have hope. Let's think about birds of prey. That curve has been inflected. For birds of prey, the situation has improved because we understood that the pesticides that we were using were hurting them. We stopped using them. So we know that humans can make all the difference. And that's the thing about citizen science. We can't turn this around without the population participating. We need people to take interest in these issues. They need to understand them more through their own participation. So yes, it is science. It is real science, but it's also about a collective awareness. Thank you, Mr. Nadeau. I would say that you're a really good communicator. You're good at raising awareness and making people more conscious of this issue. I would love you to create some of your messages in English, too, so that you could reach a broader audience. You're talking about how your podcast has increased in popularity and is among the top 100 podcasts. So your organization is great at mobilizing people, of getting people to participate. You talked about that 8-year-old who had done the Great Christmas bird count. So I would like you to share your tips and tricks with us. How can we get citizens involved in citizen science?
Ready. If you want to have a written submission, you can. Moving on to the final spot, we have Madame. Mr. Cannings.
Thank you. Well, let's Monsieur Nadeau continue. But what I want to focus on is that process. You know, we have the monitoring inventory process that a lot of this citizen science gathers big data for, where we get the trends. And then in the state of Canada birds, for instance, we look at those trends and parse out what kinds of birds are declining, what are increasing. You mentioned raptors are increasing. For instance, I know grassland birds are decreasing. Birds that migrate to South America are decreasing. And how that informs the next step and who does that next step.
I can maybe start with one example really quickly. So you mentioned grassland birds. Grassland birds are among the groups that are declining the fastest. And so once we know that, and we know that, again, largely because of citizen science, we know that grassland birds are declining, so we focus our conservation efforts there. And one example recently is we've been working closely with partners at the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. So we're working directly with the cattle industry and players in that industry who are using the data from citizen science and from this thing we call the Bird Friendliness Index to actually inform their practices. And so they are now on the ground as part of their sustainability framework using data that comes from citizen science. And so I guess to answer your question from my perspective, it helps us prioritize and direct our efforts and which stakeholders we're going to be engaging with.
So I would just follow on with that the citizen science, really the bulk of citizen science in your organization at least, is informing that initial stage, the trends, saying, setting off the alarms. And then other groups can take that, whether it's the federal government or provincial governments or municipal governments, and use that to inform their, whether it's conservation actions or to change other things they're doing. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's essentially how it works. Like, birds and birding is for everyone, right? And obviously, from my perspective, I've been a birder since I was a kid, and birds are really important to me, but they're also extremely important indicators of environmental change on our planet. These types of programs are invaluable for understanding not only how birds are doing, but how we're impacting our planet. And as John might attest, unfortunately, a lot of the other taxa, as fascinating as they are, don't get that same kind of representation. But we have a lot of people that are interested in birds and birding, and they want to give back. And citizen science and Birds Canada's programs are a way to try to do that in Canada. Connect people with nature, collect data, and do what we can to get that data out there so that we can actually conserve a lot of these birds. We have some big challenges. Patrick mentioned birds of prey. We've done well at getting them back, dealing with the DDT crisis. Well, we have about 2 or 3 or 4 DDT crisis type events happening right now, right? With climate change, with habitat loss, with pesticide use. And there's a lot of work that we need to do. So our role is to get that information out there so that work can be done.
Thank you so much to our witnesses today. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, February the 14th, and the chair will have the clerk publish the notice soon. Colleagues, with that, is there agreement to adjourn this meeting? Seeing agreement, we stand adjourned until Tuesday, February 14th.